Hey guys, Joseph Mavericks here. Nice to see you again for a weekly video. I hope you're doing amazing. So last summer, I was lucky enough to go on a 3-week vacation and unwind from my day-to-day responsibilities. And my number one priority for this vacation was to read a lot because I hadn't finished a single book in a while. I always read here and there, articles online. I would read maybe 50 pages of a book and then I would figure I don't really like the book and I would stop reading it. So one part of the goal was to finish a book. And another part of it was to also pick books I would have never chosen, I would have never picked outside my vacation. I decided to use this opportunity to broaden my reading horizon a little bit. And so over the next 3 to 4 weeks, I read faster than I have ever read in my entire life. I will go over the book throughout the video, and we're also going to cover the learnings I got from this experiment. And I realized that over this 1 month of August, I read faster than Bill Gates, who is known to read 52 books per year, so that's one a week. And I actually averaged more than that, but only for 1 month. And I also realized another similarity between me and Bill Gates, no big deal. He tends to make most of his reading during his vacation, when he reads for more than 3 hours per day. And he also reads a lot during his think weeks. Twice a year, he goes to like a little minimalist lakeside cottage to do nothing but read and think big thoughts. And in a way, I realized that this vacation, my summer vacation, was my extended think week, because for the first 10 days of our vacation, my girlfriend and I rented an amazing Airbnb cabin in the middle of the Swedish countryside. It was really cute. And we went for hikes, we drank tea, we talked, and we read a ton. So what did I learn from this experiment? First thing I learned is that it's not about taking in knowledge, it's about getting inspired when you read. Every time I finish a book on a topic I'm interested in, I feel like I barely remember anything about what I read. It's kind of like all the words and the sentences and pages, they get stored temporarily in my brain, but only long enough for me to understand the story I'm reading, to put together the insights and the facts, because I only read nonfiction. But once I close the book and I put it down, everything seems to go away. And I'm often left wondering, what the hell did I learn from reading this book? And so this vacation reading experiment made me realize that it's not always about the knowledge you get from the books. Sometimes it's just about getting inspired, stimulating your brain, and having good intellectual time. Basically, reading a book is better than not reading at all anyway, so just by picking up something to read, you're already doing your brain a favor, and you don't have to memorize everything you read. It's completely fine. And I think that a lot of this desire to always learn more comes from the productivity and self-discipline world, which I subscribe to a lot, and that's also what most of my content is about. I write about it, I make videos about it, at least once a week. So that's really kind of ingrained in me, and I have this desire. I always want to improve, and if I can't remember a lesson from a book I read, then what's the point of reading it, right? That's how I would tend to think. But the truth is, if I can walk away with one lesson or one insight from a book and remember it, which I often remember at least one thing I read from a book, then I'm happy. And if it doesn't happen, it's completely fine as well, because as a writer and a content creator, I know that reading will almost always give me ideas for new content, whether consciously or unconsciously. I also like to highlight my favorite parts and quotes from books and articles on my Kobo e-reader, and I like to go back to these notes because they're a goldmine of creativity. So reading is always useful, even if you have this nagging feeling like me that you don't remember much from it. The second thing I learned during this experiment is to broaden my interests. As I said in the introduction, I picked books I wouldn't have chosen outside of my free time on purpose, because I wanted to let go of this always learn, always improve approach, which I just talked about. So I thought it could be a great source of inspiration to switch things up and to stop always having to get value out of things. For instance, I picked the book My Body from Emily Ratajkowski because that's something I would have never ever read in my work time, like ever. She's this model slash actress girl, and I remember her from that Birdline videos, which we've all seen. And the only thing I kind of knew from her was that she was famous for getting naked a lot. And when I read the synopsis of the book, which said it was an exploration of feminism, I got intrigued. And to be honest, I didn't even learn anything in particular from that book other than her personal story, which I can appreciate, and it was not a bad read. It was just something different. Next, I read If We Break by Kathleen Bull. I did not know who she was. Literally the only reason I chose this book is because the cover caught my eye while scrolling looking for my ideas for my next read on goodreads.com. I found the cover to be poetic and beautiful, so I decided to give it a go. And then I learned that she was Hunter Biden's first wife and that this was her memoir of marriage. addiction and healing. And so I kept reading, and it was also a great read. Next, I read The Ride of a Lifetime by ex-Disney CEO Bob Iger. This is actually the only book from my vacation that I would have read during my work time as well, because it's focused on entrepreneurship and great leadership lessons, and my content tends to revolve around those things. Again, it was a good read, but nothing transcending, but it did give me ideas for content, and I ended up writing an article about the lessons I got from the book, which did pretty well. I also read Hurricanes by Rick Ross, and that was the most surprising read for me. I didn't know anything about the guy other than the fact that he was a rapper with an Instagram page full of big boys toys, and I was also surprised at the number of positive reviews on the book. I guess I was being a little judgmental there. It was also a great read with a lot of cool insights on entrepreneurship, and it also inspired one of my best performing articles to date. Also, I actually ended up reading his second book called The Perfect Day to Boss Up, about how he weathered the pandemic as an entrepreneur in the entertainment business. That was actually not bad at all either. Finally, I read Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, because it's about family issues and losing loved ones, a topic that I felt connected to at the time. I still feel connected to in a way at this point in my life. And so it was a really good read, which also made me reflect on my own relationship with my family. It made me appreciate what I have more. And I learned about Michelle Zauner, an amazing author, a musician, and out of all the books I read that summer, I think if I had to pick one to recommend, that would be the one I would recommend the most. The third insight from my experiment is talk about your reads with other people. So I'm someone who I always like to recommend books to people. So if we're like throughout conversations. So if we're talking about happiness and mindfulness, I'll definitely mention The Art of Happiness to you. It's a life-changing book by the Dalai Lama and Howard C. Cutler. It's like my favorite book ever. If we're talking about politics or the state of the world, I'll bring up Factfulness by Hans Rosling or Why Nations Fail by Darren Acemoglu and James A. Robinson. If we're talking about self-improvement, I'll mention the classic 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey or The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Amazing books. And if you show interest in my book reference, I might gift you a physical copy of the book the next time we see each other. I mean, I read all my books on my e-reader, but I think a great book is always an amazing gift. And I also sometimes first read the book on my tablet, and then if I really like it, I buy the physical copy to add to my bookshelf, because it's also just a book is also just a great decorative element. And during this vacation, I didn't have anyone to talk to but my girlfriend in the middle of nowhere in Sweden. That was really nice. And so we discussed some of Bob Iger's leadership quotes. I told her she should read Crying in H Mart because she would probably love it. And when I'm not on vacation, I always love to discuss topics I'm reading about with my girlfriend as well, or with friends over coffee, on the phone. I find books are amazing conversation starters, especially when you force yourself to read about topics you wouldn't have picked at first, because again, it stimulates your brain and gives you new ideas. I also talk about it a lot in my written content, that books have the power to teach, educate, change lives. They have the power to inspire and go much further than you thought was possible. Whether fiction or non-fiction, books transport you to a realm of limitless possibilities. Many of us have a vision of our world and society biased by stereotypes, inaccurate facts, and misrepresented statistics. And I myself wrong sometimes too, even if I'm trying to learn more. So imagine when you don't try to learn. And so if you want to ignite change in you or in the world, books are a great place to start, and talking about your reads with other people will take you even further than just reading. The fourth and last thing I learned with this experiment is that it's okay to not finish books. I used to think starting a book and not finishing it was a waste of time, because I would tell myself, life is too short to read all the good books, so you can't afford to waste time on the bad ones. But after my reading experiment, I realized 3 things. Number 1, you can't know if a book is good if you don't get into it, at least a little bit. I find that I usually know whether or not I want to finish a book by page 50 or so. Number 2, picking a book you're sure you'll like simply based on the synopsis is almost impossible. So in that sense, trying to find the perfect book to read only makes you waste reading time, because it's not a good use of your time to try to find the perfect book. I used to spend days picking my next read, trying to make sure it was the perfect one. But now I start a book if I think there's a chance I may like it, and I see where it takes me. I don't obsess so much about it anymore. And number 3, since life is too short to read anything anyway, you might as well read on. You'll still learn something new even if you don't finish the book. And it's better to read a bad book or one you won't finish than to not read at all, because at least you keep learning. So I never beat myself up for not finishing books anymore, because what matters is the act of reading, and I guess the rest kind of just flows out of consciousness and learning. And as Dr. Seuss famously said, the more that you read, the more things you will know, and the more that you learn, the more places you will go. Thank you guys so much for watching. As usual, it means the world. If you haven't already, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, feel free to leave a comment down below to let me know what your favorite books are, if you've read anything I mentioned in this video, or if you have any reading recommendations for me. I'll look forward to that as well. And yeah, that's about it really. Thanks so much for your time. I'll see you in next week's video. And as I always say, enjoy the journey you're on.